He wasn't the kind of manager anyone trusted, but most of us had learned to stay quiet. In an office where promotions moved slower than the coffee machine, keeping your head down was easier than fighting back. I learned that lesson early, until the day my annual bonus disappeared. The company promised performance incentives every spring, small, predictable, based on metrics you could track. I'd spent the year fixing systems no one else would touch, staying late, writing documentation that saved our clients hours. My review even called me indispensable. So when the HR email came through saying no bonus this cycle, I thought it was a typo. I walked to my manager's cubicle. He didn't even look surprised. He said, "Budget cuts. I lost mine too." But there was a smile hiding behind that corporate tone, the kind of grin you wear when you already know you're lying. I didn't argue, not yet. I went back to my desk, opened the shared finance drive, and started following the breadcrumbs. Expense sheets, authorization logs, digital signatures. Our accounting system left a trail even the best pretenders forget to cover. The next morning, I found the record. My manager had approved team bonuses for 3 people, none of whom had touched the projects I led. Each entry carried his digital initials, and one of them matched my bonus amount exactly. He hadn't cut the budget, he had redirected it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wasn't angry, just coldly awake. Sometimes betrayal doesn't hit like a punch. It seeps in like a slow draft. By morning, I knew what to do. I printed every relevant email and timestamp. No dramatics, no confrontation, just evidence. Then I scheduled a meeting, not with HR, not yet, but with accounting. I asked simple questions. How are bonus disbursements approved? How many people signed off on this quarter? They told me only managers had final authority. No secondary oversight. Exactly what I needed to hear. I thanked them, left quietly, and started preparing a folder. Digital, encrypted, labeled Team Compensation Review. Inside it, I placed every file, the performance reports, the budget sheets, and screenshots of his congratulatory Slack messages to the wrong people. When the folder was complete, I shared it with HR's director. No subject line, no explanation, just the data. Hours passed. The office buzzed the same as always, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, but something felt different. My manager walked past me twice that day, each time slower, each time glancing at my monitor. By 3 o'clock, he called an impromptu meeting. "Let's align expectations for next quarter," he said. Translation: damage control. He talked for 20 minutes straight about transparency and team synergy. Every word felt hollow, like he was trying to build a wall out of corporate buzzwords. But walls like that collapse fast. At 4:30, HR sent an email titled Compensation Review Follow-Up. Mandatory attendance. Next morning, 9 a.m. sharp. He didn't show up to work the next day. His badge failed at the front gate. The rumor spread faster than coffee through the break room. Termination for financial misconduct. No one said my name. No one had to. When HR finally called me in, they thanked me for bringing it forward professionally. They reinstated my bonus, added a week of paid leave, and mentioned that the CFO wanted to personally recognize my diligence. I didn't feel triumphant, just quiet. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's simply the absence of fear when you walk back to your desk. A few weeks later, a replacement manager arrived. Younger, careful, the kind who double-checks receipts. The air felt lighter. People laughed again during meetings. The new manager asked how I'd managed to keep everything running with half the resources we were supposed to have. I told him documentation helps. He didn't realize that the real answer was patience. I still keep that encrypted folder, not out of spite, but as a reminder that proof is stronger than anger. Every file is a small monument to restraint, the quiet kind of revenge that doesn't burn bridges, just lights up the truth behind them. And on nights when the office is empty, and the monitors hum like distant cicadas, I look out at the city through the glass and think about that bonus. It was never really about the money. It was about the moment I decided to stop being afraid of losing my job and start being proud of keeping my integrity. Because sometimes justice doesn't need applause. It just needs one calm person who knows how to read the fine print. She was the kind of coworker everyone trusted too quickly. Always smiling, always volunteering for the easy tasks, and always taking credit for the ones that weren't hers. I didn't notice it at first. When I joined the department, I was new, still learning how to fit in. The office was small, 10 people, open desks, constant chatter. We were supposed to work together, but teamwork only works when everyone plays by the same rules. Our manager paired us on a project that could make or break the quarter. A client account worth 7 figures, and the entire system overhaul was our responsibility. I handled the back-end design and documentation. She handled the client communication and presentation slides. It was balanced, or at least it should have been. The first signs of trouble were small. A file missing from the shared drive. An outdated version of the plan sent to the client. Minor mistakes, things I could fix, but they kept happening. Each time I asked her about it, she laughed it off. "Oh, my bad, must have clicked the wrong file." Her voice was too casual for someone costing us hours of rework. By the third week, my manager started asking questions. Why were deadlines slipping? Why were client emails confused about deliverables? I explained everything I could, but it's hard to defend yourself when the problem looks like you. She was the one forwarding those old drafts, the one helpfully CCing our boss on messages that made me look careless. It took a few days before I realized what she was doing. She wasn't clumsy, she was clever. Every mistake had just enough plausible deniability to protect her. Every correction I made me look defensive. It's an art form, really, sabotage disguised as support. I started documenting everything. Every email I sent, every file I updated, every timestamp from our collaboration software. If she changed something, I saved the version before and after. At first, it felt paranoid, like I was collecting evidence no one would ever ask for. But experience teaches you that truth without proof is just noise. Then came the meeting that almost ended me. Our client review, 30 people on the call, including the regional director and our CEO. She was presenting our progress, and I was there to answer the technical questions. Halfway through, a slide appeared that I'd never seen before. The data was wrong, completely outdated. It made it look like the project was weeks behind schedule. The director's tone shifted. "Why hasn't this been corrected?" he asked. I opened my mouth to explain, but she spoke first. "I've been trying to get him to update it. I even reminded him yesterday." Every eye on the screen turned toward me. That's the thing about digital meetings. You can feel judgment even through pixels. I stayed calm. No arguments, no anger, just quiet resolve. Because the moment she said that, I knew my documentation had a purpose. After the call, my manager asked for a private chat. I could see it in his face. He believed her. He said, "We need consistency, not excuses." I nodded, then I smiled. "Agreed. That's why I think you should see something." I shared my screen, opened the project folder, showed him the file history logs, every revision, every deleted version, every timestamp. There, clear as daylight, were her edits, her rollbacks, and her messages saying she had updated the wrong version. The silence in that call was the first real victory I'd had in weeks. He didn't say much, just, "Send this to me. Now." I did. And for the first time, I went home that evening without replaying every word I'd said that day. The truth finally had weight again. The next morning felt different. People still typed, phones still rang, but there was a quiet tension in the air, like the office itself was holding its breath. My manager called me into a conference room. Inside sat HR, the department director, and my coworker with that same painted smile. HR started gently. "There have been concerns about project management communication." My coworker jumped in before anyone could blink. "I just want what's best for the team," she said. She was polished, practiced, rehearsed. Then my manager turned the screen toward her. File histories, chat transcripts, her name beside every deleted update. Her voice wavered. "It must be a glitch," she whispered. The director leaned forward. "Our logs aren't wrong." It's strange watching a lie deflate in real time. No shouting, no drama, just quiet collapse. The confidence fades first, then the excuses stumble, then finally the silence. HR asked her to step out so they could review next steps. When the door closed behind her, the director turned to me. "You documented all of this?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "That's impressive." It wasn't pride I felt, just relief. For weeks I'd been walking through fog and now the path was clear again. She didn't return to work the next day. No goodbye email, no apology, nothing. Just an empty desk and a new folder in our shared drive titled Version Control Policy. Everyone suddenly cared about backups and audits. Funny how ethics improve once someone gets caught. A few days later, my manager stopped by my desk. He looked tired but grateful. "Good job keeping your cool," he said. "I should have noticed sooner." I told him it was fine. It wasn't, not really. But forgiveness is lighter than resentment, and I'd already carried enough weight that month. The client review the following week went perfectly. I presented the corrected data, answered questions with steady confidence, and ended with a quiet, simple line. "We've implemented new safeguards to prevent data rollbacks." The director smiled. The client applauded. My inbox flooded with great job messages. That night I stayed late, not to work, but to breathe. Sometimes peace is louder than applause. The office lights hummed softly and the city outside blinked like slow heartbeat monitors. I thought about everything that had happened. How one person's deceit had almost derailed months of effort. But I also thought about something else. How the truth, once recorded, never really dies. A month later, the company announced a new position, Project Integrity Lead. Someone whose job was to verify documentation and ensure accountability across teams. They offered it to me. The promotion came quietly. No ceremony, no speech. Just an email with the subject line. "Congratulations." I didn't tell anyone what it felt like to accept it. Not pride, not victory, just closure. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that finally lets you rest. And when I packed up that coworker's old desk to move into my new one, I found her name etched under the drawer lip, a little scar carved into cheap wood. I smiled. People leave marks in the strangest places. Some are scratches, some are lessons. Hers was both. Weeks passed, and the tension that used to hang over the office began to fade into something softer. The hum of printers, the sound of phones, even the occasional burst of laughter from the break room. It all felt lighter, like the air itself had been cleaned of something invisible. When people mentioned her name, it wasn't out of anger anymore, just caution. "Remember what happened with that project?" they'd say, and then they'd double-check their own work. That's how lessons spread, quietly, like ripples after a stone. I never wanted revenge, not really. All I ever wanted was peace, the kind that comes from knowing your effort mattered, and that the truth eventually caught up with the lie. It doesn't happen often in offices. Most of the time, people who play dirty get promoted faster than the ones who play fair. But every once in a while, the right person sees the right evidence. And that's enough. The new manager asked me to lead the next client rollout. Different team, different stakes. For the first time, I didn't hesitate. No second guessing, no fear of being undercut. I set up the same folder system I'd built before. Clear naming conventions, shared access logs, backups. Some people teased me for being too organized, but I knew better. Order isn't obsession, it's protection. I learned to appreciate the small things again. A project finished on time, an email that didn't need to be defended, a weekend that actually felt like rest. Sometimes success doesn't feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like silence. And that silence was worth every sleepless night I'd spent proving something that should have been obvious from the start. A few months later, I saw her again, not in the office, but at a conference across town. She was sitting in the back of a seminar, avoiding eye contact, pretending to take notes on a blank notepad. For a moment, I felt something like pity, not because she'd been caught, but because she'd built her career on shortcuts. And shortcuts never lead anywhere worth going. I didn't approach her. Didn't need to. Closure isn't about confrontation. It's about peace, and I already had mine. When I left the building, the evening air was cool and slow. I walked to my car and sat for a while, watching the city lights blur through the windshield. Every one of them felt like a tiny reminder. Honesty still mattered. Maybe not to everyone, but enough to make a difference. That night, before heading to bed, I opened my email one last time. A new message waited from the director. "Excellent results on the latest project. Keep it up." I smiled, closed the laptop, and turned off the light. Some victories don't need to be loud. They just need to last. And when they do, you sleep better. It started with a schedule change that didn't make sense. One week I had 40 hours, the next 28. No warning, no explanation, just a new spreadsheet posted on the break room wall. At first I thought it was a mistake. Everyone else's hours were the same, only mine had shrunk. When I asked my boss about it, he said, "Budget cuts, temporary." But temporary kept stretching, week after week, until my paycheck couldn't cover rent. I wasn't the kind of person who complained. I'd worked there 3 years, never missed a shift, always stayed late when someone called out. Loyalty meant something to me, until I realized loyalty only worked one way. What really bothered me wasn't the money. It was the way he smiled when he said it, like he'd finally found a way to put me back in my place. He'd been annoyed with me for months, ever since I corrected him in a staff meeting. He'd made a math error on a report, and I fixed it before the client presentation. He didn't thank me, he just turned red. That's when I learned that some people would rather be wrong in power than right in public. I started noticing patterns. Every employee who questioned him lost hours. Every friend of his got overtime. He used the schedule like a weapon, quiet punishment disguised as business necessity. When I pointed out that labor law required even scheduling, he said, "You're lucky to still have a job." That line stuck with me. Lucky. As if survival was gratitude. 2 more weeks passed. I cut expenses, took small freelance gigs at night, and tried to convince myself things would level out. But then I saw my time card. He'd clocked me out early, 3 separate times. Not a rounding error. Not an accident. Intentional. My signature on shifts I never approved. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started saving everything. Printed time cards, pay stubs, text messages about budget adjustments. Each one a small piece of something bigger. At first, it felt like overkill. But deep down, I knew this wasn't ending with an apology. One afternoon, I stayed late after closing. The lights hummed. The office quiet except for the cleaning crew down the hall. I opened the scheduling software from his computer. He always left it unlocked. There it was, the edits, the timestamps, and his user ID beside every adjustment. He wasn't hiding it. He thought no one would ever look. That night, I went home and read the labor code. The words were dry, clinical, but each paragraph felt like a lifeline. Wage theft, unauthorized time adjustments, retaliation for reporting errors. I highlighted everything that matched my story, and there was a lot. The next morning, he tried small talk, pretending everything was normal. I smiled back. The kind of smile you give when the ending's already written, because by then, I wasn't his employee anymore. I was his evidence. The next few days were routine on the surface. I clocked in, did my work, smiled when I needed to. But underneath, every minute felt like a countdown. I'd already filed the report with the labor board. Not a complaint, a documented case, detailed, time-stamped, verified. Their response was faster than I expected. An investigator reached out within 48 hours, asking for a statement and copies of my records. I sent everything that night, and when I hit send, the weight in my chest finally lifted. 2 weeks later, he got a letter. He didn't know I saw it. A plain white envelope on his desk, government seal in the corner, bold black print that said Department of Labor. His face drained of color. He called it just paperwork, but the tremor in his hand told a different story. The investigation started quietly. They requested payroll reports, security logs, and scheduling software backups. He tried to bluff, said the system didn't keep detailed records. But it did, and the labor board already knew that. The company's accountant handed over everything, and suddenly those invisible edits weren't invisible anymore. He tried to pin it on me. Claimed I'd manipulated the schedule. Said I'd hacked the system. But the metadata betrayed him. Every adjustment was linked to his user ID. Every change made from his workstation. The investigator called me later that week. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "You did everything right," she said. "Thank you for documenting what you did." A few days later, corporate sent a regional auditor. They interviewed everyone quietly, no names, no accusations, just calm questions about scheduling and payroll. Most people stayed vague, afraid of saying the wrong thing. But one coworker didn't. She told them everything, the favoritism, the threats, the missing hours. It only takes one honest voice to break a pattern. He was gone by Friday. No goodbye meeting, no exit speech. Just an email from corporate. "Effective immediately, management restructuring is in progress." They never said his name, but they didn't have to. The office felt different that morning. Quieter, lighter. Even the fluorescent lights seemed softer somehow. HR called me in the following week. They thanked me for my professionalism, offered back pay for the missing hours, and gave me a raise to match my seniority. It wasn't dramatic. No applause, no confetti, just a quiet correction that felt better than any apology ever could. I went back to my desk and checked my new schedule. 40 hours, full time again. The same as before, except this time I'd earned more than just money. I'd earned proof that truth still mattered. A few months later, I heard from a former coworker. He'd tried getting another management job, but the labor board report followed him. No company wanted the risk. They said he'd been flagged for ethical review. In a way, justice had found its rhythm. Steady, procedural, unshakable. Exactly how it should. That night, I sat in the parking lot after my shift. The lot was quiet, the air still warm from the afternoon sun. I watched people leaving, laughing, stretching, heading home to their families. It hit me then. This wasn't just about revenge or fairness. It was about boundaries, about learning when silence stops being professional and starts being permission. When I drove home, the city lights blurred past my window, each one a small reflection of something I'd earned back. Not power, not pride, just peace. Months later, I could still feel the echo of that fight. Not anger, just memory. When you stand up for yourself once, it changes the way you move through every job afterward. You stop shrinking to fit other people's comfort. You stop apologizing for expecting fairness. You learn that silence doesn't keep the peace. It just delays the truth. The office moved on quickly. New manager, new policies, even a framed certificate on the wall about ethical leadership that made everyone laugh quietly the first week. But beneath the humor, there was relief. People took their lunch breaks again. They left on time without guilt. It's amazing how much lighter work feels when you're not waiting for the next punishment disguised as management. Sometimes I still catch myself checking the clock, half expecting my hours to disappear. Then I smile and close the time card. Those ghosts don't live here anymore. One afternoon, the regional director stopped by. He didn't talk about the investigation, just asked how I was doing. He said, "Most people don't follow through, they get scared." I told him the truth, that I was scared too. But fear only matters if it stops you. When it doesn't, it becomes courage in disguise. He nodded and said something that stuck with me. Integrity doesn't make you popular, but it keeps you employable. It wasn't poetic, but it was real. And in this world, real is rare. By winter, I had enough savings to take a short vacation. A small cabin near the lake, no Wi-Fi, no noise, just snow against glass and the sound of quiet. That's where I finally let go of the bitterness. Revenge had never been the point. The goal was dignity, to know I hadn't let someone rewrite my worth. I remember sitting by the window one night, watching the reflection of my own face fade into the dark. The same face that once stayed late counting stolen hours. The same hands that built spreadsheets to prove what words couldn't. I realized I didn't just win a case. I reclaimed something bigger. Workplace justice doesn't always come with a headline. Sometimes it's just a calm email at 5:01 p.m. that says, "Thank you for your patience." Sometimes it's the absence of fear when you clock in and know your name won't be next on the list. Sometimes it's silence, the good kind, the kind that sounds like peace. When I went back home after that trip, I deleted the old evidence folder. Not because I needed to forget, but because I finally could. Some stories don't belong in archives, they belong in lessons. Now, whenever a new hire looks nervous about speaking up, I tell them, document everything, stay calm. And remember, doing the right thing might not be easy, but it's the only thing that lasts. Then I get back to work, the hum of the office steady and familiar. And for the first time in a long time, I feel something better than vindication. I feel safe. She came in every Thursday around the same time, always with the same perfume, the same half-smile that never reached her eyes. Everyone in customer service knew her by reputation. She wasn't loud, not at first. Her weapon was precision. The kind of person who knew how to make every small request sound urgent, and every delay sound like an insult. I'd been working there for a few months, still finding my rhythm behind the counter. Most customers were kind, or at least polite. Then there was her. She'd tap her nails on the counter while I spoke, interrupt with a sigh, and ask to speak to someone competent before I'd even finished my sentence. We called her the Thursday Storm. That day, she wanted a refund for an item she hadn't bought there. I checked the receipt twice. Different store, different city. She didn't care. "It's all the same company," she said. "It's your job to fix it." I explained gently that I couldn't process it, that she'd need to contact the original location. She smiled, the kind of smile that hides a threat. "I'll be speaking to your manager," she said. And she did. By the end of my shift, my manager called me into his office. He said she'd filed a complaint, claimed I'd been rude and dismissive. He sounded tired. Not angry, just weary of the routine. "She does this to everyone," he said. "I have to write you up, though. Corporate tracks customer complaints." He apologized as he slid the paper across the desk. I signed it quietly, knowing resistance would only make it worse. The write-up stayed on my record for 3 months. Nothing major, just a small shadow. Still, every time she came in, my stomach tightened. She'd smile like nothing happened, chat casually about the weather, and leave her empty cup on the counter for someone else to throw away. I started keeping notes, dates, times, transactions, not out of spite, but because I knew patterns meant proof, and proof meant peace. For weeks, I logged every interaction, how she'd demand free replacements for items she'd clearly used, how she'd curse under her breath when anyone said no, how she'd call the store just before closing, just to keep someone on the phone long enough to delay locking up. It became a strange ritual. Every Thursday, I braced myself, spoke softly, stayed patient, and let her dig her own hole one word at a time. It wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. And boundaries, I've learned, are the quietest form of strength. Then one evening, she crossed the wrong line. She shouted at a new employee, a teenager on his second week. He froze, unsure whether to apologize or walk away. Her words echoed across the store, sharp and cold enough to stop conversation. I stepped in, calm, steady, no anger. "Ma'am, please lower your voice," I said. She turned to me slowly, that familiar half-smile returning. "Don't tell me what to do," she said, and then she pushed a display sign off the counter. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch her. I just looked at the security camera above the register and said, "Thank you for confirming that on video." She left without another word, and I filed the report before my shift ended. The next morning, my manager called me before I clocked in. His tone was different this time. Gentle, careful. He asked if I had a moment to talk in the back office. On the desk were a few printed images from the security feed, each one a still frame of her at the counter, hands in motion, the display sign mid-fall. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't need to. The footage spoke for itself. She hadn't just yelled, she'd caused property damage, and our company took that seriously. He said he'd already forwarded the report to corporate and that they were reviewing her past complaints. It turned out she'd done this at other locations, too. Every file told the same story, a pattern of hostility wrapped in polite words. For once, I didn't feel angry, just quiet relief. All those Thursday afternoons of patient restraint had turned into a paper trail of truth. I thanked him, went back to the floor, and finished my shift like it was any other day. 2 weeks passed before I heard anything. Then, one Friday morning, an email arrived from corporate customer relations. They thanked me for my professionalism and confirmed that the guest in question had been permanently banned from all store locations. The message ended with a simple line. "We regret the impact her behavior has had on your work experience." It was corporate language, but it still felt like closure. The next Thursday was strange. The clock hit 2 o'clock, her usual time, and nothing happened. No perfume, no sighs, no impatient tapping on the counter. The silence was almost soothing. A coworker noticed and smiled. "Feels peaceful today," he said. I nodded, and we both went back to restocking shelves. That evening, as the store quieted down, I realized something I hadn't felt in months. Calm, not victory, just calm. When you work with people long enough, you learn that some conflicts don't need to be won loudly. They just need to end quietly and completely. Later that week, the teenager she'd shouted at came up to me during a closing shift. He said, "I heard what happened. Thanks for standing up for me." I told him it was nothing, but he shook his head. "No," he said. "You didn't yell. You just handled it." And that meant more than he realized. Sometimes I think about how easy it would have been to lose my temper that night, to respond with the same energy she gave me. But peace isn't weakness, it's discipline. And discipline leaves better evidence than anger ever could. Now, whenever someone raises their voice, I don't tense up the way I used to. I take a breath, remember the sound of that quiet Thursday, and let calm do the talking for me. The write-up she caused was eventually removed from my file. HR sent a short notice saying it had been resolved in error. I printed that email not out of pride, but as a reminder of patience rewarded. Some storms pass with thunder. Others end with a calm that feels like justice. That day, it was the second kind. After she was gone, the store felt different. Not just quieter, lighter, like we'd all been holding our breath without realizing it. The air carried that stillness that only comes after a long storm finally breaks. The kind of peace you don't notice until it's there. People started smiling again. Customers lingered to chat, and the new hires looked less nervous behind the counter. Even my manager seemed more relaxed. It's strange how one person's absence can change the rhythm of an entire place. But that's the nature of energy. It spreads, for better or worse. For a while, I kept expecting her to walk back through those glass doors. It took weeks before I truly believed she wouldn't. Every Thursday afternoon, I'd glance at the clock, half out of habit, half to remind myself that the silence was real, and it always was. One day, while sorting through old paperwork, I found the original write-up she'd caused, a copy that had been filed away and forgotten. For a moment, I stared at it, remembering how angry and helpless I'd felt. Then I smiled. The page didn't carry the same weight anymore. It was just paper, thin, temporary, harmless. I shredded it and went back to work. Time passed. The seasons changed outside the big front windows. Customers came and went, faces blending into the soft routine of the store. Every once in a while, someone new would raise their voice, and I'd feel that old tension rising in my chest. But then I'd remember how calm had solved what anger never could, and I'd let that memory guide me. When new employees joined, I made sure to train them patiently. I told them, "You can't control who walks through that door, but you can control what you give back." It wasn't company policy, just something I'd learned the slow way. One of them once asked if I ever got tired of staying calm. I told him the truth. No. Calm doesn't tire you. It restores you. It's easy to think of justice as a loud thing, courtrooms, confrontations, raised voices, but sometimes justice whispers. Sometimes it looks like a clean record, a quiet Thursday, and the knowledge that patience had its own kind of power. Months later, corporate sent a survey asking for suggestions to improve customer safety policies. I wrote a few lines about how staff should always have the right to protect their dignity, not just their position. I never heard back, but that didn't matter. Writing it was enough. Now, whenever I lock up at night, I turn off the lights one by one. The last switch is near the front door, and in that moment of half-darkness, I always take a breath and look around. The counters, the displays, the calm stillness that fills the space. No voices raised, no threats, no fear. Just quiet. That's how I know the day was good. Because in the end, it's not about the noise people make when they're angry. It's about the peace you protect when you choose not to match it. Which story was wildest? Drop your pick.